Up now, the astonishing story of a phenomenon that got so out of hand that even when the hoaxes came forward, people just didn't believe them. Alien invasion continues on Discovery as we uncover the mysteries of crop circles and reveal a deeper truth to the human relationship with the paranormal. Here's Revelation.
On a warm summer's night, somewhere in Wessex, England, cameras are ready to capture the secret of the crop circles. These strange patterns only form at night and have remained a mystery for many years. All the theories put forward to explain what causes the circles were based on studies of the markings left in the crop. All attempts to film crop circles in the making had failed, until now. The material contained in this film will be a revelation to most people involved with this subject, because this time, when the circles begin to form, our cameras are watching. Circles lay silent and mysterious in the cornfields of southern England. Their cause is a mystery. It's as if they appear by magic. To many people, the shapes, some simple, some more complex, have a meaning. But what are the circle makers trying to say? And who or what are they? By the beginning of May, the circles have begun to appear. Back in the early 80s, only a handful were seen, but in recent years, as many as 200 different patterns have been spotted in a single season. When the complex shapes appeared, some researchers regarded them as man-made hoaxes, while others believed them to be symbolic messages from the non-human intelligence, which they thought created the circles. Studies of the flattened crop itself seem to indicate the circle-making process to be complex but rapid. Some people believed it took only a few seconds for a circle to be created. Pat Delgado and Colin Andrews are seasoned circles investigators. By 1990, they were still baffled by many of the traces left by the circle-making force. They were gripped by a mystery they couldn't resolve.
You see, that's where these plants are lifting, only in the band around the perimeter on node 1.
Similar to the Corhampton one, isn't it?
Absolutely right. It's where node 1 will be, isn't it?
Yes, that's right.
And those that are standing adjacent are coming up on node 3.
Yes. But
yeah,
do you notice
they're in the top of the plant.
That also underlying, there's a flattening. They're actually lying flat on the ground, like this one here, and these along here, look.
Yeah.
They're flat on the ground while there's others growing upright.
That's
again.
right. Only in the ring.
Yes.
Only in that
As
ring.
though there's been a much higher pressure around that.
Yeah.
What, 10 inches wide or so?
Yes.
Ring around the outside.
Which I think, as you made the point over there, it's really a replica, almost, even in width, of the outer annular ring.
The flattened crop in some circles displayed a symmetrical swirl pattern, which seemed to indicate some kind of rapid rotating force had created the markings. This was one of the features which Delgado and Andrews felt they could distinguish a genuine circle by.
Just look at the veining formation of this circle. This is impossible to hoax. You have here an expanding spiral from the center to the perimeter, pushing out the flow of these plants towards the perimeter and striking into the, in a toothed effect, into the standing crop.
There were other notable effects associated with the circles. Those who practiced the ancient art of dowsing reported strange and powerful energies when they entered the mystery circles. It was claimed that the power from these so-called energies could be interpreted by the human mind with the help of crystals, pendulums, and dowsing rods. Delgado and Andrews became convinced that the energy which created crop circles was outside the realms of known science. By the summer of 1990, two major TV networks, the BBC and Nippon TV in Japan, decided to help Delgado and Andrews in their quest for the solution to the mystery. On the ramparts of Bratton Castle in Wiltshire, a bristling array of electronic hardware focused on a classic circles-prone area suggested by Delgado and Andrews. There was one goal: to capture a crop circle forming on videotape. 7 image intensifier cameras and 1 thermal imaging camera would watch for 3 weeks. The first formation appeared on July the 25th. Both cameras and ground investigation revealed it to be man-made. A second formation was formed on August the 4th. It was too far away for the cameras to detect what caused it. Subsequent surveillances in 1991 failed to reveal what caused the circles, even when a marking appeared directly below the cameras. In September of that year, this pictogram appeared in Kent. It was to have a profound influence on crop circle history. Following a tip-off from a national newspaper, it was soon investigated by Pat Delgado.
I classed it as I would lean towards saying it was genuine, and I feel that it's on the cards that it is genuine. But that doesn't mean to say that every other one is a hoax. I'm only talking about that one. I consider that all the others are genuine, that we've said are genuine.
Today's newspaper claimed that 2 men in their 60s had constructed the formation. Jürgen Kronig, journalist and circles enthusiast, watched them at work.
They did create a simple circle in quite an amazing speed, with a highly effective but very simple method. And the circle doesn't look too bad. I mean, I've seen better circles, the corn flat, the stems flowing around stones, bigger stones lying in the field, which wouldn't be created by this method they used here. But nevertheless, you have to admit that they know what they do, and they are able to do something quite amazing, obviously. Pictograms, for instance.
Many circles enthusiasts refused to accept their story, but Doug Bauer and Dave Chorley had planted the seeds of doubt. July 1992 saw a bizarre competition, a circle-making competition. Just how good were the human circle makers, and how did they manage to make precise patterns in the dark? At nightfall, 12 teens entered a Buckinghamshire wheat field. The following morning, this was the result. The markings seemed to be very similar to those described by enthusiasts as unhoaxable. The competition organisers asked experts from the Centre for Crop Circle Studies to judge the entries. But how did the judges know that the characteristics they were looking for weren't made by people in the first place? The man who thought of the competition was Dr. Rupert Sheldrake, a biologist who still had an open mind as to the cause of the circles.
Yes, they've done much better than I expected. Firstly, the performance at night was much more silent and much less obvious. I'd expected more lights and torches and much more noise. And when this contest started, 50 people disappeared into this field. Within a quarter of an hour, they'd been swallowed up into the darkness, and you hardly knew that there were circles being made all around. So that was very impressive, and I think the standard of these formations is extremely high. The subtlety of the way things are laid, the subtlety of the way the stalks are bent and that kind of thing may well differ from ones observed, which may be genuine in the field. But the overall impression is very, very good. I mean, they've done a fantastically good job. So I think this shows that hoaxers can do certainly much more than I thought they could do.
Of course, the judges knew beforehand that they were dealing with a full set of forgeries. I asked one of their team, Richard Andrews, how easy he felt it would have been to tell these fakes apart from real crop circles.
We would have had to have been careful, very careful, I think. The thing that was missing from them all was that lovely flow that we get, which makes it look as if it's gone down like water. And that's the only thing, really, that was missing. If that had been there with the winner, I think it would have been hard put.
Before the winners were announced, Jürgen Kronig expressed doubts about a totally human answer.
I personally think that even the best 3 teams didn't deliver everything which was required, and that there's still a question mark as far as the possibility of creating a completely genuine-looking circle or formation is concerned, because some characteristics were missing. Nothing was bent, everything was broken, and generally I would say that the flow of some or many of the formations I've seen in the past, and I think we all agree about this, was not there.
The remarkable thing about the 3 winning teams was their inexperience in circle making. Doug and Dave had refused to enter, and the Cambridge team, who came third, had only a couple of years' practice. The rest had only begun that year, including Jim Schnabel, author of Round in Circles.
I think that is a unique feature of this competition. He was the only team with a single member himself. The team who made the best formation, and I would say the most dexterous formation, Adrian Dexter.
Dexter's team used an elaborate method to avoid damage to standing crops. Their equipment was tailor-made to produce precisely the design the judges had set them. In the civilized world of the circle-making competition, there was no need to worry about being spotted by passing police cars or farmers with ferocious dogs. The fact that it was far easier than anyone thought to produce credible circle designs irritated those who believed in an unknown cause of the circles. For them, anything which conflicted with their preconceived ideas was looked upon with suspicion. Michael Glickman from the CCCS still refused to believe that humans could be making circles.
So who are these people? And why haven't we found them? No one else here claims to be a professional hoaxer. So what's their motive?
I went around last summer and for some part this summer trying to find hoaxers and trying to catch them. So it's very difficult. It's so easy to go around in a field at night undetected. It's remarkably easy.
Yes, we did that last night.
Sound is damped, and you can't see very far. And you can be fairly close to people who are actually looking for hoaxers.
The believers cross-examined Schnabel, saying there was no proof for what he was saying. In 1991, a group called the Wessex Skeptics had secretly made a circle to test whether or not the experts could prove they knew what they were saying.
We were in there for a couple of hours, and we left the field convinced it was a disaster. We thought it might look pretty from the air, you never know. I don't know whether it does now, because I never visited it in the daytime. And then a little while later we found that Busty Taylor had gone in there and his dowsing rods were uncontrollable, which didn't surprise us, because I mean dowsing I think is largely expectation anyway. So as long as he had that belief. It was more surprising that mistakes we made were actually ascribed significance. I mean the only real subtle layering we did was spokes going out from the centre. And one of our crew was French and hadn't understood the instructions properly, and he sort of made go inwards instead of going out to this weird asymmetry, which is actually touted as a transcendental feature of the circle, very significant, so even when you make errors, it's assumed to be significant. And then, of course, a while later, astonishingly, Terence Meaden authenticated it. He cited the layering, some of the layering was deliberate, but the braiding and plaiting, which we had not made any efforts to produce, but which was probably an artifact of our method, he said that all of this indicated that the circle simply could not be hoaxed by human beings. It was just, he used a very long sentence to describe it. Basically, he was implying that this couldn't be made by people. He said it was 100% genuine, a textbook example, and so on. And he then went on and unfortunately said, well, this just shows that if people have university doctorates and backgrounds and they study the literature and everything else, then they can hoax circles, which really is quite an inaccurate picture of what actually happened.
The circle we filmed was laid in a crop of oilseed rape. Some investigators said it was a hoax, some said it was genuine. Some even produced samples of mysterious bent stalks from the circle. We knew exactly how it got there. A few weeks later, we took another series of time exposures on colour film. This time, the blurred shapes of the circle maker showed up, despite the 4-minute exposure time. When viewed from the air, the circle displayed a blast-like radial floor pattern. This had previously been described by some investigators as unhoaxable. Travellers staying nearby added the arrow pattern a few days later. Another set of photographs shows the gradual appearance of a pictogram in Hampshire. By the time these aerial shots were taken, the ripening green crop had sprung up, producing a kind of spoked effect, again previously considered unhoaxable. We now had evidence that people were behind some of the circles. But who were they, and why did they do it?
I originally did it as an experiment, but as time went on, I was caught up by different motivations. One of them is pride in having made this kind of artistic creation and seeing the effect that it has on other people. Sometimes it's negative effects, unfortunately. Sometimes it's positive effects. People, have their headaches removed or whatever. And I guess the sense of knowing the truth about something that no one else knows is something which we all enjoy once in a while.
You go in there and you do it and you come out. It's a clean cut and you feel larger than life. Just like in the films.
And once you're out in the fields in the dark, your eyes soon became accustomed to that. So much so, you imagined that people on the road could see you, which of course they couldn't, but it was almost like daylight. You could just see so clearly.
We just couldn't wait for the nights to go out and take our equipment. We were sort of concocting all different sorts of equipment to do different things. And as I say, it became an obsession in the end.
Through the image intensifier, the art of nighttime circle making is revealed for the first time.
The circles that we created in 1978 with the standing walls of corn as if they'd been cut out of pastry with a knife They were our doing, and we started it way back in that time.
The earliest circles claimed by Bower and Chorley provided the foundation for the whole crop circle mystery. Ken Brown regarded the circles as a fascinating mystery when he first became involved in 1991. Yet from his investigations of formations in the Cheesefoot Head area, he soon noticed the presence of suspicious underlaying pathways, which convinced him of an earthbound cause. His reanalysis of the unexplained spoke defect in this large Wiltshire circle led to the conclusion that it was made using a wooden stick technique similar to that employed by Doug and Dave.
The story goes that there are circles that have no kinked stalks. That is not true. It is a lie. All circles have kinked stalks. Some circles have one or two stalks which are bent, but very, very few stalks are bent and not kinked. Nearly every circle that's ever been found has the vast majority of stalks broken like that or kinked badly like that, at that sort of level, 2 or 3 inches above ground level or round about ground level. I have one of the mysteries in corn circles where a few of the stems have been kinked over at, say, I don't know, 6 inches to 10 inches above ground level. Now, apparently that's a mystery to everybody, but it's just one of those things that happens. It's not a mystery at all. It's happened in this same circle that most of the stalks are broken or kinked at ground level. In this just small portion of the circle we have a few stalks that are kinked well above ground level. So it's just a mash-up, a mix-up. It's just one of those things that happens.
When the crop's fairly young, you can flatten it and it'll start to grow, and then the heads will start to fight their way towards the sun. Use the nodal points for that.
Satellites are not totally isolated, not necessarily. They are joined by a thin, narrow pathway. In this case, this is a fairly wide pathway, which means somebody's walked it walking sideways. Some of the earlier pathways may well have been walked out walking forwards and striding, perhaps 3 or 4 feet at a time, thereby only pushing down a narrow pathway a few stalks at a particular time. But it is important to see how the pathway is laid coming round this way, and you can see how it comes straight forward through there, straight into the centre of the circle. And here again, we have a typical underlay of a hoaxer walking round the ring that's joined the satellites and then straight into the centre of the circle that is going to provide one of the circles for the satellites. It's just not being logical, sensible, rational. What more can one say? These are human footprints.
As the season progressed, we were informed of many circles made by Doug and Dave. Often they would send watercolour drawings and sketches, giving details of where and when they would appear. The circles enthusiasts would still claim they were unhoaxable and marvel at the meaning behind the designs. Seeing the phenomenon from both sides was both illuminating and entertaining.
What we did for 13 years, I want to see our story accepted once and for all. And I want these people, the so-called experts and the researchers that have been doing all this work all these years, to come up and say to us, well, you were right after all.
So, Circle Vision commissioned Doug and Dave to make a pictogram, which incorporated many of the features they claim to have constructed over the years. The whole operation was recorded on video, and infrared photographs were taken at each stage of the construction. The following day, the farmer was instructed to telephone various Circle's investigators, but not tell them how the formation got there.
The whole of this, when we walk right the way through this configuration, we're looking over the last 3 years of floor patterns, the way in which it's laid in the boxes, in the rings, and right through the whole of the floor pattern. I think that's really one of the most significant things about it, and the fact, of course, it's in a position where it couldn't be seen until you actually got on top of it from the ground.
You're looking in the natural phenomenon, usually, of markings where the plants are spiralling but expanding from the centre towards the perimeter, and often there's not a spiral at all. They will push straight out like a firework burst out, and that's impossible. It is impossible to replicate that. They all go down at the same time, and indeed on occasions you have as many as 6 layers which are woven, interwoven, interconnected, and once again that shows us and tells us a lot. It means that there's not a construction order at all, that it simply happens together.
To study the precise details of the construction process, we commissioned Doug and Dave to make another circle for our cameras, this time in broad daylight. They made a large central circle using the stomping technique. As usual, it wasn't precisely circular. Then a ring was traced out following the contour of the outer rim. Its distance from the edge of the circle was 4 feet. It was measured using one of their sticks. Satellites were positioned using 2 crossed white sticks placed at 90 degrees in the circle centre. While Dave held the end of a piece of string over the centre of the crossed sticks, Doug walked round in an arc. When the string lined up with the stick, he stopped and made a satellite circle. We also asked for a demonstration of the famous baseball cap surveying technique. Once Doug lined up the sight on a building or a light, the rest was easy. what about the secret of those marvellous swirled centres? Doug and Dave couldn't explain how they did them, but they were prepared to lay on a demonstration for our overhead camera. The real mystery behind the crop circles was why people regarded features like this as a mystery. Why did so many intelligent researchers see such features as proof that the formations were not man-made? As he watched the construction of this formation, Ken Brown was in no doubt that he'd been right all along about his interpretation of crop circle features. For Doug and Dave, the circles continued. They, more than ever, wanted the world to know that they were the real circle makers, yet they weren't alone. Many people felt that circle making was still fun, while there were still people out there ready to believe there was a mystery. Unknown to the researchers, another mystery long associated with crop circles was about to be revealed for what it really was.
In the summer of 1992, following all the revelations of hoaxing the year before, there was a certain amount of despondency among the circles believers. They wanted to have something which really tied the circles phenomenon definitively to some paranormal mechanism, such as UFOs, for example. And we just kind of felt that we needed to give them what they wanted. There's a long history of UFO hoaxes which have been perpetrated using balloons, so we thought this might be the best technique. Just to buy a balloon and fill it with helium and put a light bulb inside it, controlled from a battery on the ground, and turn it on and off. We make it sort of wink so that people in the, far off in the distance saw this strange luminous object blinking on and off, just to see what the reaction would be, whether people said, oh, it was a balloon with a light inside of it, or whether they described it as some, amazing UFO.
I took part in that for my own reasons, because I feel in the past I've been deluding myself and therefore allowing other people to delude me and so on. So I really wanted to see how people reacted. Because it was important for me to see how people reacted, because I was learning about myself at the same time.
It was a beautiful night. Flares were disappearing down onto the horizon. I mean, it must have been a fabulous light show for everyone in the car parks and on Woodborough Hill. And I'm just happy to have helped contribute to that.
Someone said that the police had been watching fields and had seen these lights and had been spooked by them. I thought that was pretty amusing.
Some friends of mine actually rang me up a few weeks later, not knowing I had anything to do with it, and said they'd seen this light. And it was enormous. They thought it was an atom bomb going off. And somebody else thought it was the end of the world, because it was such an enormous orange light. Well, I know how enormous it was. It was quite small, and it was only there for a second or two. So it's almost like there's this intense need to make it happen.
There was a need to make it happen in another way as well. In the summer of 1993, Adrian Dexter, winner of the circle-making competition, had also taken to making UFOs. It's unlikely that all anomalous lights seen near crop circles are associated with hoaxing, but they're equally unlikely to have much to do with crop circles either.
The problem with any phenomenon is that you tend to see things that you expect to see. And that was a problem I had when I first got involved with circles. I was blind to all the evidence that these things were being made by people. It was only when I started to really deeply consider that was happening that I was able to see all the evidence that it was happening, and was able to accept, for example, the testimony of Doug and Dave about their circle-making activities, and was able to understand what some other people were telling me about how they had been able to make circles and how easy it was. And of course, then from there I was able to go on and make circles myself and really establish that this thing was these things were too easily made by people for them to be some kind of paranormal phenomenon. Because I've investigated hoaxing, I've been associated with the view that all crop circles are and always have been hoaxed. But I actually believe there's a genuine phenomenon that lies beneath all the hoaxing. I'm not sure what the nature of it is, but I believe it's there. Unfortunately, it's probably too rare for people to notice if they just go out on a casual basis to the countryside and wait for something to happen.
I think the experts are going to become increasingly marginalised. I don't think anybody really cares if they authenticate circles anymore. They won't in the near future. But people will go on, hopefully developing more creative hoaxing techniques, making nicer patterns. And it will eventually, as one friend of mine said, one day he'll take all the crop circle books, move them from the pseudoscience shelf and put them on the art shelf next to the stuff from Stan Hurd in Kansas and so on. So I hope it keeps going. I'd hate to see it disappear.
Perhaps the last real mystery of the circles was the mystery of the shapes. In the geometric designs of tribal people from all over the world, designs appear which look remarkably like crop circles. In fact, many people claim the markings bear similarities to ancient designs. Neurologists in America have been exploring the visual hallucinations people experience during trance or altered states of consciousness. In the early states of trance, geometric forms are perceived. In the later stages, realistic images appear mixed up with the geometric forms. The images which make up these dreamlike scenes originate from memory and will vary from individual to individual. But the geometric patterns known as entoptic forms are universal. These patterns bear a remarkable resemblance to the basic components of the crop circles. This may well explain why these patterns are recognized by other cultures and appear in historical representations, as the entoptic forms may be experienced by any human being in an altered state of consciousness anywhere in the world. If the human mind really is the origin of the crop circles' designs, then it's not surprising that they appear to have deep meaning.
The way I figure it is that even if they're man-made, the inspiration that they're getting for the shapes comes from the goddess anyway. So, you know, it doesn't matter really if they're man-made or not. Obviously it's better if they're made by the circle makers rather than humans, but even so, the humans are getting their inspiration from somewhere, and I feel that's got to be something divine also.
I think really the most valuable experience that we've learned from the whole 13 years of circle making has been the wonderful feeling that we've got in the world that we live in. And I don't know what it is, I can't explain it, Dave can't explain it either, but when we're both sitting in the field together and looking at the whole thing, that sort of feeling comes through us, that feeling of mystery. Why we did it, I can't explain.
If you discuss it rationally, it's crazy. But were we, and Doug has said it, and I used to laugh at him at first, but I'd even have to concur with him sometimes that were we being told almost to go out and do them. I know it seems crazy.
Just look at the light on this corner now at night. Look at this.
Yeah, look at the feeling.
Look at the evening sky.
Look at that sky with the lower, look at it.
You can't
it's
help
unbelievable.
Feeling that there's something different about it all.
The whole feeling of the crop circles is going to go through a shift. I think it's going to be fairly soon before everybody in town realises that the circles are made by people. I suppose you could call it sort of moving into an art form. I think the bird of fun has flown out of the cage and it's pretty hard to put it back. So I think there'll be more and more circles, and I think it'll be like graffiti. Sometimes it's offensive, to some it's offensive, to others it enhances the environment.
The mystery of the circles tells us more about ourselves than it does about any unknown intelligence. Both the circle enthusiasts and the circle makers are caught up in a web of self-deceit that is self-perpetuating, and perhaps this film will change the way you look at the mystery. Or perhaps you knew the answer all along.
So, are the hoaxes harder to explain than the mysteries themselves? Next up, we look at another little understood phenomenon, the military, and ask why do they always seem to be involved when it comes to UFOs? This is Alien Invasion on Discovery.